Okay, we are coming back into our regular session. The board ended executive session at 6:50 p.m. We are entering the section of our meeting for public comment. Is there any public comment here in the room or on Zoom? Okay, so if you would state your name and attendance area and come off mute and show your video, and you will have 2 minutes to make public comment.
Hello, my name is Michelle Whitehead. I'm a parent caregiver, and homeschool is Grand Ridge Elementary. I am wanting the school board to know the complete and total disaster my daughter's experiencing at Grand Ridge, both academically and emotionally. My daughter has been bullied since day 2 of starting school with various students. Most recently, the report was made that a boy was pushing and shoving her on the playground. We were told both verbally and in writing that as an accommodation, my daughter has been provided a paraeducator. This is untrue. This is a lie. My daughter has not been provided a paraeducator all month long in the month of January 2024. I have been fighting for months on end to get my daughter served academically with her IEP. This has also been a disaster. I have emailed her 4th-grade teacher every time. I do not understand her Friday newsletters, and I do not understand her short, one-sided answers with zero active communication. I have had to resort to contacting the Issaquah Education Association president to get my 4th-grade academic and curriculum questions answered. I was this week's old when I found out what reading level 0 was. It wasn't reading level 0, it was reading level O, as in orange. My daughter still reads at 3rd-grade level and needs improvement on every one of her iReady reports. Her school does not respond to any questions about academics, missed classroom assignments, missed lessons, missed IEP minutes, nor has there been any plan on how to catch my daughter up. They are in serious violation of IDEA law for taking away her ability to work on math homework weekly in her class when all of the other general ed students are allowed to receive math homework weekly and turn it in. My daughter is in gen ed with only IEP pulled out minutes. She has never been treated equally in her classroom, not academically. My daughter has been discriminated against with her education. She and I have both been retaliated towards with the entire staff and the administrative staff in the district. My daughter has missed 19 school days so far due to her anxiety. The IEP team, the school staff, and the administration staff are not problem solvers. They're not interested in having legally protected parent participation. They're not child-focused, and they are not interested in hearing or participating in any collaboration with me as my daughter's expert caregiver. They have now rescheduled my IEP meeting twice since December 8th without my consent. Your special education students are not being served. We need serious help and we need serious collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there any other public input? Okay, seeing none. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda.
I have a public comment for
I'm
Jen,
sorry.
if that's okay. This is a very special and exciting time to be able to recognize school boards because it's school board recognition time of the year. And I think last year I added up the number of years that the collective school board had serving, and it's a little bit different now, so I'm not going to do that. But I am on behalf of our school district, our community, I want to say to our school board members, thank you for what you do, because you put in so many hours to ensure that we are focusing on the most important things that matter for our students' experience. And I welcome this new team together, and it's just very exciting to see what we will all accomplish, and very grateful. But I do have a proclamation that I'd like to read in formal recognition of your service. And you also have a care package about helping us stay on track and on the right trail to success. But I am honored to read this proclamation in your honor and in your recognition. So whereas, and this is by Governor Jay Inslee, so I'll just state that as the author of this as I read it. Whereas the mission of Washington's public school system is to ensure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible members of a democratic society and enjoy productive and satisfying lives. And whereas Washington's 1,477 locally elected school boards of directors, and 9 elected educational service district boards are the core of the public education governance system in our state, serve more than 1.1 million students, have a combined annual budget of over 15 billion, and employ approximately 120,000 people. And whereas school boards play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability for all involved. And whereas school board directors are directly accountable to residents in their districts and regions, serving as a vital link between members of the community and their schools. And whereas school boards and ESDs provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize school board directors as outstanding public servants and champions for public education. Now, therefore, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, hereby proclaims January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month in Washington, and wants to encourage all people in our state to join him and others in celebrating this special observance. So I will raise my hands in celebration of our fabulous school board for Issaquah School District. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping me on track on the agenda. Okay. The next item is approval of the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
I second.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstained. Okay. Next item is establishment of the regular agenda. Are there any changes?
There are no changes.
First item tonight is work study recap. So tonight we had the opportunity to continue our transition of our newest school board members and really discuss how do we approach monitoring reports. ENDS 2 for students is our academics and foundations, and it is the core of what we do and what is the essence of our student experience through our system. And we spent 2 hours talking about that and talking about different board members' perspectives on how we monitor progress and how we look at data. And thank you to Superintendent and her team for all the data you do to allow us to have those rich conversations. And thank you to our students who were there in attendance, because your participation is always appreciated. With that, I wanted to open it up to any reflections from board members or student board members.
Well, I have to say, first of all, echoing your comments, just a big thank you to the district for putting together the report. It's obvious there's a lot of work that goes into it. And, being new to the report, it was just, it's a really thoughtful, in my mind, collection of data that helps tell the story for us about what's happening in the district. So really appreciate that. And also a thank you to Director Gallinger and Director Mullins for spending some time during the work session to help Director Coyne and myself, as we're again new to all this, for them sharing their views really on how they look at the data and how they analyze it, so that we can begin to kind of get a feel for that as well. So now we know it's really just a lot of work, I think, on my part, now that I'm grounded in the data, to try to start, interpreting it and coming to some conclusions on my own that I hope will be helpful for the district as well.
Thank you.
Well, Director Taylor already pretty much covered my thoughts on that. So I won't take up too much time, but again, thank the individuals who put together all of the data and spent time with us and, really analyzing and interpreting it. And then a huge thanks to Director Gallinger and Director Mullings for spending time on really helping us to see how they interpret it, what they look at, what focus areas are, what resources that we can reach out to be able to do a little of our own research. So thank you everyone for your help with it, but really informative.
Great session. I think it was good for us to take a longer period. To have 2 hours in a work study is a pretty significant chunk of time for us. Ultimately, when we look at ENS2, it really is all about the academics and the progress of our students across their time with us in the district, and successful outcomes for them at the end. So it's kind of the core or center of all the things that we're doing. So it's interesting just thinking about even my own progression in how I have absorbed or looked at that information over the course of time, and no longer being the new person, which is still shocking, in all of this, and how the clarity of information that's been being provided to us has gone up. The depth of discussion we can have about how effective the programs we have are running, and how we can continue our work of ensuring fantastic outcomes for every single student within the district is super important. And when we're in a district like Issaquah with fantastic educators and wonderful students, we certainly have many, many statistics that are going the right direction, graduation rate being one of them for sure. But there's always that more we can be doing to make sure that all of our students are having successful outcomes. And so for me, it was great being able to spend some time as we are forming this new team in this work to make sure that we feel comfortable with what we're getting into, and that we can look at that information together and then start to form what our plans look like together as a district. So I know we'll continue to have conversations on these specific outcomes, but today was a really good time to kind of be aware of what data is available, and at least put on display how we have looked at it in the past. And I know that the two of you will form your own way through that and what's important and what meaning looks like to you. But I think it was a really good use of our time.
And before I make any comments, I want to acknowledge that Director Moraldo is representing our state in Washington, D.C., currently in meetings for the National School Board Association. So that's why she is here in spirit only. But I do want to also acknowledge it's really helpful for me coming into my 9th year to hear perspectives from Director Taylor and Director Coyne, especially the focus on, so this isn't work that only the school district can do, but this is going to require the whole community as one perspective, and hearing other perspectives on, hey, these are the data points that I think are important, and that we have to balance having really rich data, but not be overwhelmed with it. So then we don't know where to focus and how to make meaning of it. So I'm excited. And I think that having these points will allow us as a team to really focus our efforts collectively on what are the high points that we want our district to leverage. I don't know if there's any students that had anything,
I want to thank the team in academics and teaching, learning, and overseeing schools for their work to, prepare data and interpret data and consider how that data impacts the day-to-day work. And certainly annually and over the years, both data, the lenses, and the context changes. And so it is so important to assess which data at any given moment in time is the most important one. And if that does not change, that tells us something. But if it does change, it also tells us something else. And that helps us deliver greater value and impact as a system to all of our students. And that does bring me to the point of the data point, which is as a classroom teacher, you're looking very closely at individual data for every single student. And as a system, we're looking at it across all schools and many classrooms. And so the point that was made during the work study was around how is this data review helpful for us to assess the health of the system as a vital sign, and or maybe not a vital sign, and how do we address that particular issue if it's a problem or a challenge area. So thank you. It was very helpful.
Perfect. I think that will hopefully prepare us for when E2 comes at our next meeting. So we will have been deeply immersed in the data already. If you do review the data sets and have questions, or there are specific tweaks or asks you want of it, please do elevate that to our superintendent. before next Monday or Tuesday, so her team can get what you need. The next item on our agenda is works in progress.
Great, thank you. I'll start with an update about what's been top of mind this past week and this month and going into a bit of early February time, but it is kindergarten family information time. Registration opens on February 1st. I've had the opportunity to attend 2 events this week and was really so inspired and reminded of all the amazing work of our schools at helping new families enter the public school system for the youngest learners, and how that partnership within the district and with each PTSA is so very important to creating a welcoming environment in individual schools and to help make the process less overwhelming with the flood of information that is required to register your child for school. So I see that collective impact, and for those of you that are hosting even welcome nights tonight, just thank you for all your efforts. I'm also thinking positive thoughts for all of our students who are taking finals and have just concluded taking finals. But it's been, a series of weeks and days to be thinking about where each student is in their journey of what test and assessment they might be encountering. I've had a chance to speak to some students in the middle of the week, past week, and hear how they're feeling about finals, and appropriately so. Those who had already taken the finals that would be most challenging for them or that were top of mind, they had a big sigh of relief and I'm ready for just, the end of this week and to have a non-student day. And some that still had those big finals to go, maybe 2 in one day, or still kind of a little bit, I'm not really feeling great right now. And I feel a level of stress, which is again, appropriate. So, we saw certainly the range of how students were experiencing the ebb and flow of the stress level during finals. So thanks to all of our students who were taking those finals this past couple weeks. So those are the big updates across the district, what's happening in our schools. I would say that a couple of things that I wanted to bring forward about our academics and foundations, which is our ends too, and that's really focusing on our students being prepared after graduation to pursue their passions and dreams through higher education or career work. And specifically, I want to recap a couple of important data points about how our students have earned different credentials over this past semester. And our Issaquah School District students have earned 878 industry recognized credentials in semester 1 of the 2023 to 2024 school year. And these consisted of American Heart Association Basic Life Support certifications, American Heart Association Heart Saver First Aid and CPR certifications, Washington State Food Worker cards, and some Adobe Certified Associates in Photoshop. So as we continue to talk about credentialing and career readiness, this is a series of important markers that help us know what's happening. And I look forward to seeing those numbers grow for this year, but also on an annual basis, seeing those numbers grow every year annually beyond this year. Additionally, for secondary innovation with a focus specifically on reimagining the high school, we are hosting 3 design sprints, with the first one starting on February 2nd from 5 to 6:30 at Skyline, and that will be in the library. These design sprints are idea generating sessions that will help participants come up with new ideas for school innovation and the future of education. Everyone is welcome at these design sprints. We will use these ideas generated at each of 3 sessions total to inform our innovation work, and students, again, of all ages and any adults in our community who are interested in reimagining education are invited. And I want to make sure that anyone listening tonight can look for more information and signups next week in our various bulletins. There will be 3 total, and the first one starting on February 2nd. Last time I spoke about the AI community practice that we are participating in. We are participating with another 12 districts across this country that reach nearly 1 million students. We had our first meeting this week, and it was a powerful opportunity to begin to share hopes, dreams, and even fears of leaning forward and failing forward into a very fast and rapid learning cycle of trial and error with the use of AI. And this not only supports how our students are learning, but it also supports organizational effectiveness in being more productive and hopefully creative, moving from just an individual use case of AI to an organizational case of AI. So this connects to actually all of our ends in all the ways, and really supports our mission of helping our students really thrive in a dynamic global environment. So that's an update of some further work we've been doing there. And other than that, we are that's a wrap for my work in progress so far.
Thank you for that, Superintendent. Any questions with that? Perfect. The next item on our agenda is capital projects and bond update.
Great. Well, we have Martin Turney, Chief Finance and Operations, and Tom Mullins for capital projects.
There we go. I think that worked. Hello again, Martin Turney, Chief Finance and Operations, Director Tom Mullins joining me for our regular update on capital projects. And we are also going to combine that with a bond planning update to give you kind of the latest on how that's going. So again, purpose, we're going to run through some highlights of the 2018 and 2022 critical repairs levy projects and where we stand. We've attached the latest roster of projects and their status to the agenda, and we've also updated the capital projects website so it's there and available for the public. And then we were going to give the bond planning update as mentioned. So in terms of the 2018 critical repairs levy projects, we know this is a priority area for this year, and we want to make sure we're showing as we progress. Since the last update, in progress projects have increased from 14 to 23, and there were 2 completed projects during that time. So again, showing how we're progressing along the way. All previously uncompleted projects are now in process, with the exception of the Challenger HVAC, which we paused until the conclusion of the Clean Building Act audit. So we wanted to make sure we did that in the appropriate sequence so that we get the data first before we attempt that project. And again, as mentioned, those project status reports are on the website. Moving to the 2022, there's one highlight that has to do with the clean building standard. We've started and we may have even completed, or where are we at with those, Tom?
They've completed the first phase of the audits, which are the going into the buildings and actually doing the physical portion. Now they're in the process of gathering the data and putting in pricing to that data.
Thank you.
In the preliminary scopes.
Yep. So preliminary scope and some data here in late January would be next week. So again, status on the website. So anyone can go check that out and see where we are in those total 2022 critical repairs levy projects. Now shifting to our bond planning. So a big preliminary piece of us getting ready to have our committee meetings and commence with the rest of the bond work and the planning is to do these facility assessments. And so we've contracted out for this. However, our staff, our capital project staff, does a lot of work with these teams. They go out to all the buildings and they assist them in reviewing and assessing our infrastructure there. So the site assessments are completed with the exception of some minor soil testing. They're now gathering data to get us a cost estimate and prioritization report. On track to get that toward the end of January, so right up around the corner here. But they have to take some time to really finalize that report, and so that's expected to come in February. Is there anything else you want to add on that, Tom? Okay, so progress as expected. That is good. We are on the verge of our first bond advisory committee meeting, which will be on Tuesday, January 30th. We have sent out our invites. We will be sending out another notification to that group tomorrow, just letting them know we're excited to have you coming on Tuesday and what to expect. So this initial meeting, there'll be a lot of welcome, getting to know the process, what this is about. We will do some history and, some understanding of our district and our facilities. So that'll be a good introductory meeting. Again, we have 8 meetings, and as we have these meetings and we create materials, minutes, and any summaries, we will post those to the website, which is linked here on this slide. So I wasn't going to read through each of the meetings, but we wanted to give you a little glimpse. This is a tentative schedule of how each of the 8 meetings might play out. We are keeping in mind that as the work, this collaborative work with the committee members takes place, there can be some adjustments to how we go to meeting. So if there's need for more information that we haven't provided yet, or there's a change in how we're approaching the conversation, we want to make sure we have room for that and we can make adjustments along the way. So this is kind of where we sit right now, and we'll enter our first meeting knowing that there's a possibility of adjusting that slightly. So. Just in conclusion, we will continue the work with the 2018 and 2022 critical repairs. We know the prioritization is the 2018 levy. So continuing to do a lot of work there. I want to give a big thanks to Tom and his team for all the effort they're putting in right now to get these projects over the finish line. And we will continue planning for the remainder of the bond advisory committee meetings. And again, keeping the website up to date as we go with any relevant information. So that concludes our update. Are there any questions?
I have just a comment, not a question. I really appreciate you laying out the structure of the upcoming meetings for the bond and already having that website structured so people can follow along. I think that'll be really helpful in the process. And then I just had to compliment looking at just the reports of the previous what's in progress, what's completed. It's just a lot easier to read. It's very clean and super helpful.
Any other comments or questions?
I've got just one very simple question. I agree, the reports are great, very easy to read. I noticed in the 22 levy, though, that the lead testing for water is listed as future. Just curious as to why that is. Everything else is.
Simply because we haven't kicked it off. We anticipate doing that in the course of the year, but until we actually get the beginning of the project, we just list it as future. So it's not that we are postponing or indefinitely not intending to do it. It just hasn't been assigned and initiated yet.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a comment / request on the website. Are these meetings in person here or?
They are in person and they're open to the public. So you might be giving us some.
Yes, so I think
query
it
in
would be
that.
great at the top of on the meetings tab, if it would lead off with saying these meetings are held in person wherever and they're open to the public, so people would know that.
Great
I just don't want it
suggestion.
to come across as a closed process. I think we have to over communicate that if you want to come, by all means, come.
Yes, so just to reiterate actually what is happening, those meetings will be here in this room. This is a very easy, accessible part to all of our district locations across 110 square miles, and plenty of parking and very comfortable and ADA accessible. So we want to make sure people can access that in person here, and they are open to the public, and we welcome everyone to attend. And that's part of, we hope, the process that the community will go through at large since they're not maybe on the committee. Yeah.
So below each date, if you would probably put the time and location where it says January 30th on the left, you would just say the time as well as that it's here. And at the top about it being open. And then for members, since it just lists their name and their roles, maybe again, also at the top to highlight that this list is inclusive of or representative of every building in our district and however you want to say it. But I don't think you need to highlight where everyone's from or what they represent, because I really like how you have highlighted that people are wearing multiple hats, which I think is a good thing. But I still think we need to, again, show that we have representation from every school and building in our district, and that it's also inclusive of students, staff, parents, community members, elected officials. I think that's just important, again, for people. They may not look past that first top line because they're probably not looking for names, but that part would hopefully give them assurance that this is not some handpicked list of the superintendent.
There was an application process and we had a very overwhelming response. And we wanted to make sure it was very balanced across all the district. We have 9 students, I believe, or 8 students, I believe, that are on the committee from middle and high school. And people do wear multiple hats, and actually it is listed that way for a reason, because we're going to tackle some who are you and who's in the room work at the first meeting as part of team introductions. I don't want to give too much away about the activity, but after we go through that process, we will update also the website with some details, further details about that. So thank you for that prompt. The need will be met, and more to come, and I don't want to tip away too much more.
Love it. Any other questions for our team? No.
Thank you.
Thank you for the updates. The next item is secondary innovation update. And, when Sydney and I were planning this meeting, she was very wise to put them together, because we do want our community to understand that these things go hand in hand. And sorry if I was getting into your framing.
They go hand in hand. And I do want to say that while we are saying it's secondary innovation, really the focus first is on reimagining the high school experience. And we do recognize that once we make shifts and once we know what those shifts are and what those implications are for our work, both our facilities as well as our programming, we have to reverse engineer that and start working our way so that the experience becomes a seamless experience through our entire educational journey. So it is a starting point within secondary innovation to focus on reimagining the high school. And I'm very always, pleased to introduce Julia Bamba, but she can introduce herself and to talk more about the work today. And I'm really excited because it's kind of becoming crystallized about what our process will be. And it's really an open field to be testing, and we will derive our way together into that work. So with that, I'll pass it along.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Tauyik and members of the board for having me here tonight. My name is Julia Bamba, Principal on Special Assignment leading Secondary Innovation. The purpose of tonight, I'd like to just provide an update to you on secondary innovation work, preview a timeline alongside bond planning, review goals and a work plan that goes through April, and then share some discussion questions so I can get some input and allow space for you all to discuss among each other some thoughts on innovation. So as I shared during the secondary innovation update in the fall, we've spent the last few months establishing partnerships with those that are in the innovation and who are also in the design space. And then here's just a few highlights from the work over the last few months. We've engaged with administrators around secondary innovation during the January All Administrators meeting. We've launched a grant-funded interdisciplinary problem-based program for second semester at Issaquah High School. And students who are a part of this program will learn through hands-on problem solving, both in school and in the community, to earn English and environmental studies credit. Our empathy interview team has completed nearly 50 interviews, and we have about just 2 weeks left to continue with our empathy interviews. As we move through, then we'll move into the theming and then the identifying opportunities process. During that time, we'll be using over 1,000 quotes from our empathy interviews to engage in this process. I'd also like to share that an ISD team attended a pathways convening in Tacoma. There we were together and explored expanded pathway options and school models that are happening within our state. We heard from state and district leaders around policy and practices that are moving districts ahead in this work. I'd also love to share that we were a model at this convening because our team of 7 that we brought, we had 3 students with us. And we also had a student that was on a panel. Of the over 200 people that were attending that conference, we were the only district to have students learning alongside adults in that space. We were recognized by just modeling and being a true example for learning alongside students and keeping student voice at the center of our work. So I was very proud of our team, and the students were amazing. We've also started with an organization to support us in analyzing our secondary education data and exploring possible school models. So we know that innovation takes a community, and here you'll see the high-level goals that we have over the next few months that are also aligned with our engagement efforts and will provide us with new insights, new data, and ideas around secondary innovation. The current engagement efforts include empathy interviews, focus groups, district leader engagement, some school visits with leaders, community design sprints, and bond planning. So as I just shared, student voice is really important, and we must always keep this at the core of our work as we reimagine education. Throughout all of our engagement and design work, we'll continue to keep student experience and voice a priority. Some of this might include interviews or focus groups, going out and asking for feedback. But also I want to make sure that we know that in the empathy interview process, over 40% of our invitations to participate in this went out to our students. And that it ranges from students in elementary school, middle, high school, and then our alumni as well. And as the superintendent just shared about the design sprints, I want to make sure, I've always talked with our board representatives, student representatives, that we really encourage students of all ages and adults in our community to join us for those innovation design sprints as we generate new ideas around school education and reimagining education. And then as the advisory committee, bond advisory committee kicks off next week, we're looking forward to engaging with those students as well as having them participate on a student panel at our second meeting. As we continue with this work over the next few months, our essential question is how can we build on the Issaquah School District's academic excellence while better meeting all learner needs and improving learner experiences as we design a fourth comprehensive high school and consider new possibilities in existing middle and high schools. We're developing secondary data, or we're analyzing secondary data and outcomes, developing a vision for secondary innovation, identifying high school models to explore, and then building an implementation plan around high school innovation. These next few slides just really share the high goal areas that we'll be working on with just some of the tasks that are happening during that time to help us meet those goals. Developing an understanding of current secondary education experiences across the Issaquah School District. In February, starting to explore possible secondary education models or program designs and gathering feedback on those. March, finalizing preliminary school model options aligned with the vision for secondary innovation. We'll also be working with you all at your board retreat. And then in April, designing a plan to implement 1 or 2 high priority initiatives and develop capacity in alignment with our bond proposal. So I'll stop there, and then I do have some discussion questions. I'll give you space to just discuss among yourselves. And then, I'd really love to hear thoughts with the first bullet. And then if you feel like there's time, maybe hit on another couple bullets if you'd like.
Perfect. So I think I want to make sure that we have student voice here as well. So if our students feel brave enough to want to tackle the first bullet before we adults start talking, I would love for you guys to speak first. If you don't have thoughts, that's also okay, but you guys are the product of what we've delivered so far and would be the ones closest to know what you would suggest to change.
Yeah, one thought that I have for one discussion questions is how I would define long-term success for students. I hear a lot of students say that, at least in my school, that they feel like they're learning the material to, pass, and they're learning material to, pass the next test, pass the next final. But they wish they had more opportunities to learn, lifelong skills and really skills that will help them succeed in the future. And I know that is pretty hard because how do you quantify that? How do you, measure that? But I think that's something that students would like to have more of. And I think one example of that could be, certificates of, demonstration of your ability. And one example of that was that in my sports med class, I learned first aid, CPR, and I got that certified from the American Heart Association, which we talked about earlier. And I think these kind of things are really helpful in, not just it's not just a test, it's something that can be used in the future and helping the student success in college and when they have a job. And I think that those things are kind of important.
Thank you. Yeah.
For me, one thing that I really value in terms of secondary education is the Gibson-Eck model. I think it's super cool. I think a lot of people in the comprehensive high schools still can look at that model when we see it and think, wow, that seems like such a great experience. And I think it'd be really cool to integrate some of the styles of more student initiative and that kind of learning into our high schools. And that could be in electives that are based on projects or research opportunities, because obviously our models between the high schools are very different, but I feel like that could be a good start.
Thank you. Leilani?
Like to add that like as a senior moving into college and stuff, I've been part of the Gibson Eck model, and for me it's been very successful. I've loved doing it. I think like one of my biggest like not concerns but like things I'm thinking about like after school is like finance stuff, and there's been public speakers who brought this up, but I'd really love to like have more classes that are like focused on financial literacy in the new high school. So yeah.
Thank you. Oh, hey, sit up.
I'm gonna echo what Mia said about learning. I feel that in general our schools could have a lot of more application-based classes where students would learn how to not just the theoretical aspects of the material, but how to apply it in the real world or even just in other theoretical concepts. But yeah, I feel that there can be more interaction between subject materials in all subjects which we have in our school. And I think that's a great opportunity for the district when it comes to secondary education.
Thank you. Alba?
Also like having participated in the Gibson Eck model, I think that it would be really cool to see elements of Gibson Eck like mentorships and internships and apprenticeships and the design thinking method married into the like structure and depth of traditional school and in a way that's scalable. And like personally, like it's really exciting for me to see things like that already being applied. Like watching this is like watching an exhibition, and I'm excited to see like the way that that is applied. And I think that will be one of the biggest like assets for future students.
Thank you to our students. You guys can continue to contribute, but I'll open it to our board members if you have thoughts. Again, I think what was asked of us is what do you see as 2 to 3 biggest opportunities for the district when it comes to secondary education, experience, and outcomes? What do you think?
Yeah, I think when I think of biggest opportunities, definitely like kind of connecting classroom experience to, the real world. And like we're saying, like internship stuff, kind of more connecting, like every class should have something that really connects it to what you can expect in the future if you pursue that field, or things that can really have a kind of real life connection that students can feel and students can interact with. So maybe for math, like just teaching the topics might not be enough, right? Maybe students need to experience that. Students need to see how that plays out in the real world. And think of like big opportunities as in for that kind of connection. I thought of Math Day that we had at Skyline last year, where we went to UW and we saw how professors and students, did mathematics. What was the mathematics like there? And that really taught me a lot about, how math is done at a higher level, but also, that connection between it really gave me like, it made me kind of realize like, hey, this is really important. This is not just something, I have to just write down on paper. This is something that is important. People do care a lot about and do have an impact on my future. So I think opportunities, really connecting it to real life, connecting to our community, making these more, making greater experiences possible.
Thank you. Anyone?
So for me, one of the biggest opportunities is being really clear on the finish line post-school and walking that back to what the experiences are in school. So, we have pathways with names today. So if one's a college pathway, then what is done? Like, what does a kid really need to be ready for college? And that's more than, I guess to the point about real life, that's more than just coursework. And so what does it really mean to get yourself all the way to school? What does that mean from an emotional preparatory standpoint? What are some of the independence things people, a young person should learn before that first experience? So do we encourage, a week on a campus someplace for summer programs so that young people actually are experiencing what it might feel like to live in a dorm? That's a big transition. And I speak from like trying to figure out how we get prepared for that now. I think that today, that's maybe for us the unseen benefit, or we didn't think about it, the benefit of Running Start. Explaining that, yes, you pay for books was an interesting thing that you never thought to do before. Or what does it mean to really manage time in your day without it being structured by the standardized school program? I think we're missing, like, what does that done feel like? And how do we allow our young people to experience that as part of their preparation? In addition to, what does learning look like at the next level? I think that high school today is maybe a little overly structured. And so I think it can be a bit shocking for young people, the amount of new thought, the amount of new perspective they will get stepping into a college campus. So how do you open up that world a little bit for them? So other pathways, like if done is the military, then what does preparing for the military actually look like? Is that part of our physical education program so that our young folks are getting prepared to step into that life, not just, I'm going to go to the military as some generic concept. At some point, you're going to have to put on packs and run. Like there's a piece to get ready for joining the military. The same with the, professional trades. So what is the real preparation process if you want to become an electrician? Well, then there's real steps in order to start that apprenticeship or other steps. So I think, to the point about making it real, that we talk about the pathway, but I'm not sure today we're doing those pieces that actually prepare young people to take that pathway and to experiment it and decide, oh, maybe I don't want to be in the military, or maybe I don't want to be in a trade if this is what it might feel like, so that they can make some different choices earlier.
Dr. Coyne.
First of all, Julia, great work. This is exciting. I'm glad we're having this discussion. Three things really resonate with me that have already been mentioned, but I love this idea of elements of Gibson-Eck in our 3 and soon to be 4 comprehensive high schools, and the idea of mentorship. I think we have such a varied, you look at our community and we cover probably all professions in multiple ways, and think about engaging those individuals to come in and help in all of our high schools, and meeting with our students would be pretty incredible if we could work out a broader mentorship program there. I'm going to put my professional finance hat on, and financial literacy is huge for me. I'd love to see more of that. I hear that all the time. And it's important. It's an important lifelong skill to have. And so I'd love to have us do more of that, and have that be built in more broadly to our curriculum. And then I just have to mention too, social connections. I want to make sure we're continuing to think about that for all of our high school students, wanting to make sure that all students feel like they have a connection in some way, whatever that might be. It might be in sports, it might be a club, it might be, some other after school activity. But having that connection in high school is so important in terms of, driving success, I would say, post high school. So again, thank you for the opportunity. Great dialogue here.
Dr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to echo some of the comments you just heard, but I would really like to see more opportunities for kids that aren't necessarily on a 4-year college track. More opportunities for exposure to the trades, certifications, tech schools, all of those things. I just think we can do more in that space for those kids. So any programs that enable that, I'm a big proponent of. And I agree, from what I know, not having a high school student, but it does seem that our high schools are overly structured. So any opportunities to give kids more individualized choice in what they want to study and how. Now, that does not sound easy in a school model, but attractive. It does sound attractive. And I will just echo, this is kind of personal experience. When I went through law school, one of my biggest complaints was I was never exposed to the law, the practice of the law, until I started at a law firm. And it was quite an eye opener because it is not what I expected in practice. And I may have made different choices in my career if I had had an opportunity to intern earlier in a law firm, have an exposure to the practice of law. So anything that we can do earlier on in kids' educations, we're asking our high school kids, what do you want to do with your life? What's your career path? Until I think kids are exposed to actual professions and what those things mean, hard for them to make choices, or they could make better choices perhaps for themselves if they have more exposure to those things. Those are my thoughts.
Sarah.
Coming back to the point about financial literacy, that just reminded me, I feel that another big opportunity that the district has is, along with teaching all of these academic skills, or technical skills that would help people succeed in the future, I feel that there should also be a great emphasis on a couple of these soft skills or stuff that they would have to know in order to succeed in life. For example, public speaking, that's a skill which some people might find pretty challenging, but I think it's essential that people learn how to communicate with others. And along with that, there are so many more examples of skills which we could teach and we could integrate with the classes that we have. And I think that would make the students who graduate, that would make them better people and better citizens, and they would better contribute to our society.
Just one additional thought as we talk about more choice, which I love that idea in the school day. I think we have to be careful though, by adding more choice. Sometimes we add more stress too. And I think we have to be very careful about that. So there has to be some sort of a balance. If we're adding additional class or an additional period to the day, we've got to be careful that that's not adding more to a student's work. So just an additional thought there.
For me, when I think about like the 2-3 biggest opportunities, a marker for success that I would look at is I can't see us doing this work and not having the professional trades be a core part of what we do at one of our buildings. Given that $1 in $4 in our economy across the country is spent on healthcare, I can't imagine this being successful without a healthcare focus at one of our buildings. And I mean healthcare broadly speaking. So because there are just so many different mechanisms to engage. And that's where you could get a certification of like to be a CNA, and you may never do it, but that real world learning to have to go through the training, to go through licensure and to apply to jobs will help you whether you go to college, whether you like, no matter what. And then lastly will be, we live in a technology region. So that also, I think we would be missing the mark by not having. So those are the 3 big buckets that I would say would be must-haves in my mind, because the focus for me would be on career connected learning. And I think that to what I've heard here, to balance what Dr. Coyne just said about like not overwhelming our students, I sure feel like the very last week of school has very limited value. And maybe we could, I don't feel like there's a lot of academic learning that happens, at least maybe it does at Gibson Neck, but in our comprehensive high schools. But maybe we could infuse some career connected learning that week and connect students who, rather as a pause to go into summer, to really think about how we use those last few days since testing is over, and say, let's have connection to careers. Let's have you, go and spend time in community. And so we can bring in sort of those Gibson Eck approaches in that moment in time. That might be a safer space for our comprehensive high school building leaders to not feel like they're giving up part of what their core mission is, which is to get students ready for XYZ. So, yeah.
Kind of continuing Siddharth's point, and also like the point of being prepared to like enter trades and things, I think a really valuable skill that I think is also important to be pushed is incorporating student responsibility to reach out to professionals and adults for research is really important, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, and a lot of the times in traditional education, there aren't opportunities for us to learn how to reach out, and it's not incorporated into every course that we take, and it's not incorporated into the way that we learn. And I think that's a really important thing to push, because that's something you have to do all through college, something you have to do for the rest of your life, and building that confidence in students before they graduate, before they continue on their chosen pathway, will be really important for them. I think that would be something that'd be great to incorporate into like continuing with experimenting with secondary education.
Yes, thank you.
Adding on to Director Gallinger's point about career explorations, I think it also might be one thing we could also do, along with getting Gibson X students to come to comprehensive high schools and talk about their experience, is perhaps it would be good if we could actually get people who work in specific fields to come and talk about their experience. So for example, if someone wants to go into computer science, maybe it might be a good idea to get a coder or something like someone like that from one of these big tech companies like Microsoft or Google, and maybe ask them to speak about their experience to those kids. And I think that might be a good idea in order to show students about how exactly their lives is going to be in the future. And I think that might help them make better choices.
It might make their desire to do Zello more effective. Ethan.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Siddharth. I think it's very important to give students that exposure, like I was talking about earlier. And I think we also have to we have to consider the fact that there's kind of a stereotype or a stigma around different courses to, different paths that are besides college. Like at my school, I think for most students see their future as going to college. It's the standard path. It's the path that everyone thinks is, that's what's supposed to be. I think that before we even think about how we should expose students to that, we should also consider, how do we deal with the stereotypes? How do we deal with, making sure that college is not the default option, but all options are considered. And maybe that's something we start, earlier. Maybe that's something we start in middle school. Maybe it's something that will be exposed students to throughout their time. So it's not something that they're thinking about like I did, like, sophomore year of high school or junior year of high school, something that students are able to kind of slowly become acclimated to it, and that they're not seeing their only path in the future as college. I think that's extremely important to destroy that stigma first.
Dr. Quinn.
I was just going to tack on to what Hava said. You said something that really stuck with me in terms of kind of a connection to adults and really building a skill of starting to build a network, which is huge. That's a huge contributor to success in the future. And so I love that idea. I think if we could open those doors and tie it to not only helping our students, but this idea of starting to build that initial network and reconnecting with those adults that help you in high school, that likely when you're post high school will help you in the future from a career standpoint. So love you brought that up.
My suggestion would be, as you do this work, I would love for you to, what you listed focus groups. I would love, if it's possible, for you to reach out to students who have disengaged with our system, because we want to hear what would they, like, how we didn't meet their needs in some way. So what would the Issaquah School District need to have done in their high school experience for them to have stayed engaged? And I think that's a really important piece for us to know, which would probably be really informative for us, if it's possible for you to find those students.
Yep. Yeah.
The second thing is to answer your question for number 4. Year after year, the sessions that I go to National School Board Association from Pewaukee School District in Wisconsin, I feel like they have taken the approach of added career connected learning and mentorship into their comprehensive high school. Now, granted, I think they're a high school district. I think they have one high school, but what they've done for that high school, and it's very similar demographics to Issaquah, suburban community, high achieving kids that I think there's a lot to be learned, and it's what they have done. I think is scalable for our school district. So that would be what would be at the top of my list externally.
Great, thank you.
I would add to that. I am very interested in the ag tech schools. I think there's something really different about those programs and about the level of engagement with kids who are inclined in either growing things or raising animals. And I think as a tech person, I say this, but I think we're missing something in our lexicon, which is really important to one society, which is how do we feed all the people we have here. But I think there's a different set of connections built in those programs that I don't see represented in what we're doing. And so I am very curious about what could be possible if we look at ag tech and using all the same various amount of skills, but in that space. I think that connection to the earth is one we should really explore.
Any other parting thoughts from our board members? While they're thinking of any parting thoughts, anything from our superintendent?
I am so excited about this work. And so I just want to thank you, everyone, for your discussion and input and concrete ideas and big ideas. And all of that helps sort of add to the mix of things. I know that sometimes it can seem like, when you're in a school district that there's an answer out there, and there really isn't. There are multiple ways to achieve increasing engagement and relevant learning. And so we are really looking forward to uncovering what that means for many people, and then putting that into some form and format to make, choices and get feedback on further refined information and models. So excited about that work. Thank you. This is just a starting point, and there's more to come in very rapid design sprint fashion. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that we are able to have these parallel conversations and being able to dream and reimagine high school, and then be able to execute that with whatever building modifications need to be done. And so it isn't going to be like, oh, we were doing this dream and it's on a shelf, and 5 years from now we can execute it. This would be something that we could potentially execute starting in 2025. And that's really exciting. So thank you, everyone. We will continue this theme of conversation in 2024. The next item on our agenda is a bond refunding update.
Great. This is our second opportunity for a bond refunding essentially. And that's really great because it helps us save taxpayer dollars. And so Mariah Benasek is here to introduce our representative and guest. And so I'll pass it over to Mariah.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. So we refunded the 2013 bonds in December, and that resulted in about $2.5 million in tax savings over 6 years. And tonight, Piper Sandler, Ryan Swanson, he's the senior vice president. He's going to present the financing plan to refund the 2014 bonds. And on the next board meeting, February 8th, we're going to have the bond council here, and we're going to present on the resolution at that time. And we also have Scott Bauer from Municipal Advisors as well joining us. So I'd like to invite Ryan to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariah. I did not expect that. Thank you to the board for inviting me to this evening. I've been doing this for 26 years, and I've attended a lot of board meetings. The discussion you all just had, I'm going to take a lot from that tonight. I have a 15-year-old in Seattle. He's going to get an earful from me tonight when I get home. On that note, thank you again for having me here. We'll get through this. As Mariah said, I work with Piper Sandler. We are an investment bank, and we represent the district as your underwriter when you sell bonds, municipal bonds specifically. So we are the liaison between an entity that is borrowing debt and the investors that would be, purchasing that debt. What we do is over those last, 26 years, we've helped the district find the financing for all the capital projects that you've undertaken. And as those bonds are outstanding and get paid off and you move forward in time, if interest rates cooperate, you have an opportunity to refinance that debt, just like you would with a home mortgage. And as you can see, and I'm probably going to mess this up, but is that the pointer? I'll step over. Well, the caption box with the orange outline around it, you can see the interest rates over recent time period. They have dropped precipitously at the end of last year as the FOMC has done their work to fight inflation. Well, as rates have dropped, as Mariah said, we have an opportunity to potentially save taxpayer dollars on the debt service of the 2014 bonds. Those bonds were issued in June of 14. Right now, there is $44,625,000 of principal outstanding, and that will come due in the years 2027 through 2030. The average coupon of those bonds right now is about 4.5%, or essentially what the APR is for those bonds outstanding. And an important feature whenever you sell bonds, an entity will establish a date at which they have retained the right to refund those bonds or call them back from investors. It's called the call date, and we're approaching the call date for those bonds. It is 6/1/2024. The reason why that's very important is bonds that mature before that time, you're not allowed to pull back from investors. So essentially whatever interest is owed on that portion, you would have to pay. But the bonds after that fact, you can refinance and then potentially have interest savings on that loan. So the mechanism would be that we would issue a new tranche of bonds, refunding bonds, to pay off the bonds that are already outstanding. And right now, with interest rates where they stand, we expect, well, we would hope to be able to achieve a true interest cost on a new series of bonds of 2.64%, well below the existing 4.5%. And we would expect the savings to be around, I'm going to use a round number, $4.7 million, which would be hopefully helpful to your community. That translates into a net present value savings of the par amount of the bonds to be refunded of about 10.6%. You'll notice that I've done a little bit of math here. What if between now and when we actually sell the bonds, interest rates do not cooperate and they go up, taking away refunding savings? Well, I've targeted a potential present value savings of the old debt of 3%, which is generally accepted as a sort of minimum savings to be achieved if you're going to go through the effort, because your administration will do quite a bit of work to get this accomplished. What would be a minimum threshold that would be worth following through? If interest rates went up approximately 139 basis points or 1.4%, we would still be able to achieve 3% savings. I very much hope that they don't go up. If anything, I'd like them to go down and be even more improvement, but that is essentially what the scenario could look like at a worst case. So to see how those savings would happen, in this sheet, we show you when the prior debt service in the second column from the left that exists right now, how it would come due. The column in the third row from the right, the refunding debt services are anticipated or projected debt service on the refunding bonds we would issue. And the green boxed column would be the savings. And as you can see, the differential on a 6-month period, it's not much at the beginning because there is no principal coming due on the bonds that are currently outstanding. But when the principal is there, we save about $1.3 million in annual savings. And that's on a tax year. Roughly, on the bottom bar there, you see $1.3 million. And from a tax rate perspective, it's about 3 cents per thousand, or $30 per $1 million of assessed value a year. Some of the highlighted parts of the scheduled events that we will undertake to make this refunding happen. Obviously tonight, a quick briefing for you all so you understand what we're trying to undertake. As Mariah mentioned, in a few weeks, hopefully the board will be able to consider and adopt a delegation resolution, which would establish the parameters that would need to be achieved before a free financing would occur. That would then allow Martin and Mariah and a bunch of us other fine folks to pull together all of the documentation. And Scott, sorry, have to mention Scott. He is very involved in this process. To pull all the documentation together, eventually have ratings calls with the rating agencies, both Moody's and Standard & Poor's, to get a third-party arm's length critique of the district's creditworthiness. Hopefully by the beginning of March, we'll be able to have a due diligence call because we'll have pulled together all of the documentation. And then shortly thereafter, we would price the bonds mid-March. March 12th is our target date. And ultimately, the bonds would close on April 2nd. That's the rough timeline. And with that, that is the end of the presentation. Are there any questions that I may address?
Dr. Coyne?
Thank you. Great presentation. And I would just say, I know we don't have any community members here in the room right now, but folks that maybe are listening or will listen to this recording, this is big news. And I think sometimes our community doesn't focus on information like this necessarily. So this is really good news for the community. I just want to emphasize that to anybody who might be listening to this. This is something we want to make sure we're spreading across the ISD community. So thank you.
That is an excellent point. These opportunities are rare because obviously all the stars have to align with interest rates being low and at the timing of the call date. So it is rare opportunity. So it's awesome that we can take advantage of it.
I see no other questions. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you all.
The next item on our agenda is adoption of the school improvement plans.
I move the board approve the 2023-2024 school improvement plan, SIP, for each ISD school as presented.
I second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Wanted to open that up for discussion, and before I do that, I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to open with or not. Okay. So I'll just frame it to say that we had 3 meetings, November 2nd, December 6th, and then January 17th. In this transition of board members, current director Coyne and Taylor graciously joined us as audience members to demonstrate their commitment early to this process. I believe that these meetings are some of the most important ones that we have as a school board in connecting with building leaders. Unfortunately, this January 17th one happened on a snow day, so it got moved to Zoom, which was a little challenging. But I wanted to open up on sort of thoughts, and if you have any reflections and we're like, oh, I'm going to refer to some sort of data or whatnot, I'm happy to project that as we go. I will do that if people make any references.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really important process within the district to take a pause, look across the entirety of our levels of school and buildings to understand what plans have been put in place to drive better outcomes in each building, how those relate to each other, and then how one of the things that's always really important for me is to talk about how that translates across the levels from elementary to middle and then to high. The process of how we order who we talk to switches from year to year. And this year, the cohort was all in feeder pattern to high school. So all the elementary schools, middle, and then high schools that are grouped together. Really insightful to be able to follow that storyline for what's, a set of our students all the way through that process. As always, I think that the district does a really great job of presenting the data and the information about the schools, providing them together so you can get a good sense of performance in an individual school, but also how that relates to others at their level. So greatly appreciative of that work as always. And I think getting to hear from the leaders of each of those buildings is always just incredibly inspiring of the level of care, the level of thoughtfulness that goes into every day of operating our schools, the amount of individual stories and the level that they know the children that are in our buildings, and frankly, to hear the stories of how all of the programming we have lands and is at work around our students, I think is very inspiring. And then to have, open dialogue about, and yet all those great results, what can we still be doing to move forward and again, have great outcomes for each student. So I appreciate that we spend the time. It is a significant time commitment for admin, for building leadership, as well as the board. And we also move that earlier in the year, which I think is important, so that if there's great learnings that can be captured in school year, that can happen as well. So as always, time really well spent and well done.
I'll just tack onto that too. I mean, ditto on all the above. I would agree. It was that you explained it well. As a new board director coming in, I really appreciated the opportunity to sit on or to observe the first two SIP meetings prior to being elected, and then appreciated for our third SIP meeting being able to participate in that. I think seeing the feeder pattern conversation was really useful, but I know as I'm hearing from our more tenured board directors, they've said, hey, the other structure is really nice too with all the high schools. And I could see that too in the middle schools and elementary schools. But I did love the feeder pattern conversation because obviously there's such great connectivity between all of those schools. So I would just say it was a great way to get more information from an onboarding standpoint. So appreciated the opportunity.
More of the same. I mean, I'm going to sound, my comments are going to echo Director Coyne for sure, but really just a great entryway to the board for somebody just coming onto the board, and also a great way exposure to the staff in the district as well. Really appreciated that. Two themes that really came out, or things that perhaps I wasn't aware of, but all the great work that seems to go on between the levels, meaning elementary school and the handoff then to middle school, and then really conscientious thought about handoff then from middle school to high school, and all of those folks trying to work to make sure that those transitions are as successful as they possibly can be. I've really enjoyed the conversations around those efforts for sure. And then also, it really resonated with me that the work that seems to be going on in the buildings right now with principals and teachers really getting to know their students and making sure that every student is accounted for and has some kind of a relationship with somebody in the building, and that there's really that oversight for success. So that really resonated with me.
Any thoughts?
I appreciate the while we had overlapping board members formally at each of our school improvement plan meetings across many months, I appreciate the opportunity to move the timeline up for these conversations. I know our building administrators and team members and colleagues do as well, to the point that Director Mulling said, because we get to take that learning and actually have that be sort of considered, integrated, acted upon, and move forward earlier in the year, as the past prior years had been specifically done in later parts of the year. So it kind of got integrated into the next academic school year. But I want to say a huge thank you to all the board members, current and prior, for their contributions to that work this year, and to all of my colleagues and school principals for their effort to prepare for that. So thank you.
Great. At this time, we will open up for public comment. If there's anyone in the room or on Zoom that has any public comment on this item. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your engagement as we go through these meetings. I know it's a lot of time that you take out of your day and a lot of prep time for both on your side as well as our side. So thank you. I think it's time well spent. The next item, oh, sorry, is for us to vote. So, on the motion, if all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstained? There you go. The next item is a policy update for the board. And we are going to at this time have a discussion on refreshing or updating our policies. And I apologize, I did not get this out in advance, but I wanted to highlight this, and I guess we should have more copies for our student. I didn't realize we would have people up here, students, so I apologize. They may have to share one. I think there's enough for them to share because Marnie's not here. Yeah. So Oh, it looks like there's enough for, look at that. Okay. So what's in front of you is a document, and you can look at that while I sort of introduce it. So what Director Coyne and Taylor have joined us in is we have had a discussion over the past probably now year and a half about increasing discomfort with the sort of the double negative language in our policy governance policies, like thou shall not, seems just very grammatically awkward. But we all have full-time jobs, and as volunteers, remember, we're all volunteers here. So the thought of going through 25 policies and adjusting that language seems daunting to me. But we do want this work done, and thinks that at this point we probably need to leverage outside help to do that. And to not lose sight of it, I think that one of the things that push me over the edge to want to do this is, in one election, we lost a huge amount of institutional knowledge. And I think this is the moment to do it, because we may then, after another election, lose more institutional knowledge, and then you have lost that moment in time where we have enough still knowledge of what's been and the why to then, as we look to change it. So what my hope is that we as a board can have a brief discussion on what sort of we would like to see from scope of work. And I've outlined in bullets some of what I thought the scope of the work could be, but this is really open for discussion because I want the board to touch this. And then the work wouldn't begin until after our retreat. So the vision would be that we would publicize a request for proposal for facilitators or consultants to help us with this work. We would then select them. Both of those dates would be in February, and then they would join us for one of our retreat sessions, and then we would talk about this together. So this isn't like you touch it now and then you don't get to have a say, but this is for us to get the path started. And everything that we do and with our community is open and transparent. So part of this will include some must-have wordsmithing that you want. So because I have been pressed for time this week, I thought it would be a good exercise to see what ChatGPT could do for me for this. So you see that I inserted that, and that's what it generated for us. And the red was what the words I added, because that's the adjustments that I made to what was generated out of ChatGPT. But as our superintendent has talked about AI and how we sort of do that dance and that integration, I thought we could I was curious to see what it would actually do. So I wanted to open it up, and maybe Stephen, you can project it, because actually, yeah, fine. I don't actually have that electronic copy on my computer right now. If we would focus on the scope of work part, as well as the qualifications and experience, the rest of it, unless you have strong feelings about, I think those are the parts that Sydney and myself, our superintendent, and Bethany can sort of finalize and formalize according to district policy and procedure, because those are where that's your expertise. So after we hear from that, I would then like our superintendent to weigh in on what she envisions is the pathway we need to go forward with to do this correctly. So wanted to open up to specifically commenting on scope of work and or qualifications and experience that you would want to make sure you see in anyone that we would ideally select for this.
Can I just ask a follow-up foundational question? And I don't have totally open to this work, but have there been instances where you feel like the policies now are misinterpreted because of the way that they're written, or difficult to read, comprehend? You know, I'm just trying to get at what the impetus is for the work. I've read them myself, but I haven't used them in practice yet, so to speak. So I'm just kind of curious what the impetus is for this, or more on what the impetus is.
I don't want to speak for anyone else. I think for me, I think they seem dated as far as that type of language, I think would be something that was acceptable 20 years ago when they were written. And that probably seems like less current use of grammar and language that we would, if we were gonna write these policies in 2024.
Okay.
And I think that because of the negative connotation, I think that just sends I think the wrong message. I don't think it conveys the message of partnership that I think we convey collectively up here. I feel like if someone's just reading it, it comes across to me very
Prescriptive almost.
and compliance driven and very like almost adversarial, like
Okay.
thou shalt not.
Mhm.
And I don't think that's the intention of it is to drive conversation and dialogue, not to, it's actually intended to drive partnership, not, I don't know if you have thoughts on the language.
I do, but I'll maybe let Mia go first.
Oh, yeah.
I think a big reason that this kind of editing could be important is just because I feel like today, even in the work study, we talk so much about community engagement, and all of these policies are posted on our website, and we really want the community to be familiar with them, and I think making the language more readable and accessible is a big part of that.
Thank you, Mia. You said that perfectly. Because as I came on, now I'm a year and a half plus into the role, it was take a fresh look at our executive limitations and ends and your interpretation and how that might shift given different lenses and perspectives and experiences that I bring. And, I think we had through those conversations as I engaged with the board, those discussions yielded a lot of, oh, this is actually outdated, to your point, Director Gallinger, as well as this is an awkward state. Maybe we have more board work to do. So actually there was many more next steps at the end of each conversation last year and even into this year around a recognition perhaps that the board has, hey, we have some work to do on what are we actually trying to say through this policy as it relates to expectations and results and district goals. So there was a high volume, I think, of those recognition points. And so in some, it leads to a lot of additional work for the board to do. And the district is happy to support in any way, shape, or form and in partnership to your point.
I think one of the things that stood out to me as I've gotten more involved in the policy work over the last several years has been, I think they are not aspirational as written. And so they come across as a bit more about command and control than about the aspiration and potential. And so I think in order to work around that, then the addition of the value statements, which really get more to what is aspirational about the ELs, was added to the top. And then it's like, well, if we had to add this whole value statement, then we're probably not in the right place in the policy itself. So I think the policies, and we've gone through over the last couple of years and really looked at them, and we always will, about are they saying what we want? But there is always this awkward pause of, okay, we want to, shall not, fail to, and then you read them all again once you can sort out the double negative in your head. And so I think for me, it really is about how can we just have the policy itself embody the aspirational nature of what we're hoping for versus trying to back our way into that.
While we're continuing, Stephen, can you scroll up to the scope of work section, please? Did that answer your question, Dr. Taylor?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, thank you.
I encourage also our superintendent, so please do weigh in on this as well. This, as we stated, is a partnership, so we want to make sure this is a reflection of what our collective desire is to change these.
So it's a question for the board. Number one, there might be, I heard a lot about language, but then there's also different models here of governance and policy being mentioned. And they're slight potentially by some eyes, but also might be deeper for other people in terms of exploration. So I don't know if it's just about the language, but it's considering the shift of both language and governance, which I think has two parts of that potential scope of work that could be considered. maybe a book study, or what is the difference, and how does that actually drive the kind of partnership and desired and aspirational goals that the board has truly. So there might be some additional learning in that regard as part of number one, not just transforming the language.
Yeah, good comment. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think the first thing that stood out to me was the use of coherent governance. And so I guess I just want to make sure we're knowingly taking on any different attributes and how coherent governance may function versus policy governance, in addition to just those language switches. So for me, that'll just be more understanding, as you just said, of the side by side of those. I want to modernize the language. I want to get rid of the double negatives. I don't know if there's something else, a gift with purchase in there with the coherent governance. I just want to be aware of that.
Just to be clear, I think that both policy governance and coherent governance very clearly and distinctly outline the work of the board is policy and the work of the administration is operations, versus traditional governance would not have the approach that we have. Not that one's necessarily better or worse, but I think was defined 2 decades ago by this board and administration in order to separate roles very clearly and to very clearly maintain who is expected to do what. And I think coherent governance continues to keep very clear lanes that other governance models don't. Any additions, suggestions?
So I guess on that point, should part of this scope of work be expecting this entity to help on what that training component of it, of what is coherent governance, so that there's that level setting, and then get into the actual work of updating.
So something like providing necessary training and background.
Yes.
On, say, applicability of coherent governance to the Issaquah school. I would say the work of this Issaquah school board.
I think that's right.
Okay, it's good. And does that meet what you were trying to accomplish as where they choose to recommend by book study or by formal training, that would open it up to?
Yes, I think it does. And then I think that there's the choice. So I was reminded through your comment around the board chose to enter the space and move towards that process for policy governance. And then as Director Mullins was talking about, what is it, right? And I think there's not only the learning, but then there's before you get to applicability, there's a choice and conversation that the board needs to formalize probably in some way. From a process perspective, there's a shift in the policy model. Right, but that's through the learning process.
And I think I would say in my time on the board, it's been kind of a gradual shift of how it's gone. And it's been termed a lot. It's been policy governance the Issaquah way, which is essentially been coherent governance. And why we have not done that is for the investment costs of time that our board hasn't had previously, as well as any potential costs of what this would cost. But I think we're to the point where, especially with not new, but a superintendent's been in a year and a half and brought in fresh eyes. I think this is just the right time for us to do it. And these policies were essentially, the backbones of them were created 20 years ago. So I think it is time for us to look and say, it's not 2004 anymore. Were any of you guys born then? No. Yeah.
So action for tonight, because I'm in full support of this work. Are we looking for just a kind of the green light from the board to move forward with this, or what does that look like? I guess.
Yeah, I don't think we're not taking any formal action. I think it's the head nod approach of like, hey, we're on the right track, and now we're to the part where it's left to the four of us to execute this, as long as you don't see any like speed bumps, red flags, things that are like, oh, well, what about this? Or you're missing this, or I really would like to see this. And as you see this, please do over the weekend. Like if you're like, hey, I want to do this, please reach out. Perfect. Other thoughts you have as far as process and things that we need to have awareness of, because we are not employees of the school district, nor do any of those contract
Great,
things.
great question. And so once we get, now we're at this point of the conversation, we can, and I'd love like some direction on timing, right? So then we can help make a operational plan working backwards to support this. And then any final details, as they come out next week and help support that. So we can make that plan. We can give everyone the heads up, and a little direction on the timing would be great. So this February 16th date is sort of the date. Is that flexible at all by a week after the break? You know what I mean? But I know that you were trying to hit a certain mark in time to be able to, have conversations starting in March.
Yeah, since we want to invite whoever is selected to come to our March meeting, I want them to have time to prepare for that March 4th date. And so that's why it was important for me to give them, we're talking only like 2 weeks. And I think for what we want them to do, they will need time to do that.
Great. And then the other question I have is, if there's a wrinkle in that from a process level, I'll come back to you. The other suggestion I have is to, have 2 board members be on a selection committee for reviewing any proposals. We could provide some additional team members to help serve as the sort of district staff perspective, and we can go from there. So if there's a process by which you want to solicit that now or later, we can, or now actually probably is the next step for some of the other items on the agenda. Or did you already? Okay.
We don't have side conversations here, so.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why, yeah, actually, it's probably now, so.
Yeah. Bringing it up, is there someone that's passionate about it? I think I would like to be part of this, since I'm responsible for making sure our retreats happen in an orderly, timely fashion.
I can just share on that timeline. It can't be me. The next 6 weeks here are really tough for me and my schedule.
I'm happy to do it. Arnold.
Perfect.
Great, thank you. I'll probably enlist someone on the business and finance and operations team, and I'll assign myself.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you for that late walk on to the agenda. It was just, I think, an important thing for us to do. And when we built the agenda for this meeting, we did that as a placeholder, and then sometimes that gets away from me. I'm like, oh, that placeholder was for me to put a link in there for. So I apologize. That's all on me, and not consistent with board policy to have something in your hand within more than 24 hours. So the next item on our agenda is legislative matters. Not sure if we have much to report, except that we're going to legislative conference down in Olympia this weekend. And a shout out to Bethany for all the work you've done in arranging for the legislative meetings and all the arrangements for our students to come down. So beyond that, I don't know if there's anything, Director Taylor, you have to add?
No, not at this point. Looking forward to it, though. I think that's good conversations.
Yeah. This has typically been a highlight for our student representatives who've gone in the past. So not want to set up for it not to meet your expectations, but definitely come ready to ask questions and to make sure you have a good understanding about what are the salient issues that we will be spending our 10 minutes with legislators on. So yeah. And the next item is announcements and correspondence.
I want to congratulate our student reps on getting through finals. Congratulations. Enjoy your weekend. You deserve it.
And next is calendar and future agenda topics. The only one that I see on there that I wanted to bring up is we are having a unique moment in history, at least in the board time that I know of, is that we will be graduating 6 kiddos in the next 5 years from this board, which is kind of crazy. But pre-COVID, part of graduation ceremony included a 3-minute speech by a board member for any given year that we would rotate by schools. Because we're entering this period where we have a bunch of board members that will be parents that in previous years, those parents have elected to speak at graduation. I would want us, if we're going to move back to that process of having board members speak at graduation, I think that should be something we wholesale do now as we enter that period and go back to our pre-COVID approach to graduation. Or if the intent or desire of the board is to not do that, then I think that this is the moment for us to have that brief conversation. Because I wouldn't want us to sort of whipsaw every year and do it differently. I would rather us kind of make such a move forward so our high schools can plan appropriately for their programs.
It's interesting because we're staggered a bit with each of us this year, me next year, and then you the following year. That's kind of interesting.
And then we'll do it all over again.
And then we'll do it again. Yeah, we'll do it again. Yeah, it's.
So I think maybe definitely my first 2 years, maybe 3, we were doing the full speeches. And either way, right, there's a receiving of the graduating class, right? There's the base piece that needs to be done as the board member accepting the class. So there is a speaking role. I feel incredibly conflicted on this question at the moment. So the first year, it was terrifying that I did. I was like, I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to give this speech at someone's graduation. I think it went well. But then I think by the second year after that, you get past that. I do think it is a special moment. And so I enjoyed doing that 3 minutes. I enjoyed leaving some bit of what I could share with the graduating class. I think the conflicted part is like, I literally already feel teary even talking about it for this year. And so I'm happy to do that this year. I will just say now that the likelihood of me crying is pretty high this year at the one that I do. So that was like, I was like, so yeah.
You can start the trend, I guess, with that. Yeah.
I just would love, since we have this happening over the next 5 years, I would love for us to hopefully make this decision one time rather than year to year decide. So if people want to move back towards that, then I think we should let our administrative team know that that's our desire and intent so they can plan accordingly. Or if we're like, no, we're still good with not doing those again.
3-minute speech. I'm in.
I am too. I'd love the opportunity. Be fun.
Sure. I have no. It sounds like I'm not doing one of these for 4 years. So.
Oh no!
Sorry.
We have 5 graduations.
We have 5.
Oh, 5 graduations. I see. Okay. I
Although we did them at 4.
I know, but 4 speaking, but
4 speaking.
So yeah,
we
so
had
speaks to
5.
that though.
So how would that work then? I guess
that comes later. So that way, that will
Yes,
be a
we
very
select-
formalized process that we will do.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the students come, they will come soon though, and
So
invite
you invite us?
us to graduation.
Yes.
That is coming soon. I don't know what this will do. We have a tight schedule on the various matters, so I don't know if our graduation committees have also, yeah, so we can provide this information back to them. Because I don't think they were expecting that this year in the planning. So this
Which
is,
is why.
yeah, so it's
Yeah, the
new
acceptance-
information.
The formal acceptance is 30 seconds anyway. And so it's really an additional 2.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes.
2 minutes on top of that.
It
I mean,
was
I'm in
cut during
favor of
COVID.
consistency, so I mean, yes.
Yeah,
The
I
turn
agree.
times got longer during COVID, so. we should-
correct. Yeah, we've gone back to our normal graduation times and spacing, so. Anyway, that's the only thing I had. Any other calendaring and future agenda topics?
No, we've done a masterful job at scheduling into the future, I think.
Yes, the last one here is for SIP meeting update for when you have a new suggested date. And then I would also recommend that we switch them to 4 hours since we're doing 2 of them with bigger groups rather than 3 of them. I think we'll need more time since they're bigger. Like one of them's gonna have 16 elementary schools at it. So. And then I think if there's nothing else. Nope, then this is.